Good day, and welcome to Impact, a community affairs discussion program from the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. I'm Jeff Frederick. Right in the middle of southeast North Carolina, a 115-mile blackwater resource of unimaginable beauty wanders through 5 counties, creating habitat for flora and fauna and the admiration of countless. Part of the greater PD River system, the Lumber, whose headwaters are called Drowning Creek, eventually makes its way into South Carolina, where it meets up with the Little PD and then the Great PD, which flows with the Lynchus and Waccamaw rivers before hitting Winyah Bay and the Atlantic Ocean in Georgetown. As a blackwater river, the water appears dirty, but in fact, it's about as free of pollutants and human activity-related issues as possible. The tea-colored water comes in large part from the dissolution of tannic acid, or tannins, found in leaves and plant materials and the like. As a wild and scenic river, the Lumber carries federal and state protection. As wide as 80 feet or so in places and as deep as 15 feet, the Lumber is a story to itself, an essential character in the unfolding history of Native, African American, and white folks up and down its banks. Fortunately, this precious jewel of natural beauty has protectors, like the Lumber River Conservancy, a group which works to protect access and keep the river, habitat, and wildlife safe and out of harm's way. Full disclosure, I am a member of the Board of Trustees of the Lumber River Conservancy. Joining me today to talk about the river, its meaning, and why it's so important to watch over this precious resource are Dickson McLean of the Lumber River Conservancy, Lane Garner, Superintendent of the Lumber River State Park, and Dr. Joseph White from the UNC Pembroke Biology Department and the Executive Director of the Lumber River Conservancy. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So let's start at the beginning. Talk about how you got interested in the river, why it's so important, and some of what your own experience is with it.
Well, I grew up in Lumberton, and I grew up canoeing the river, fishing, hunting, and just enjoying swimming occasionally in the summertime, just enjoying the river. And it's sort of a natural part of what I did when I was growing up, and I have good childhood memories from it.
All right. Yeah, well, I've worked with North Carolina State Park System, and as you know, Lumber River State Park is part of the system also. And I worked at several other parks, and opportunity to come open here at Lumber River State Park, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to come and join the team and get to learn about the history and the natural significance of the Lumber River itself. And since being here, I have been enjoying it.
So my history with the river is a little different from Lane and Dickson's, and that is I'm an import. I've only lived in the southeastern part of North Carolina now for about 2 years. And obviously I'm very involved with the Lumber River Conservancy and protecting the river, but my interest in streams and rivers and wetlands goes back for as far as I can remember in the western part of the state where I grew up, from hunting for crawdads as a kid all the way through my doctoral research was on studying these systems and sort of the benefits they provide to humans.
So each of you have had a chance to interact with a bunch of different people who have different stories. Why does the river mean so much to so many people? What is it about it?
Well, I think it's been the Lumber River from its source up near Highway 15501 towards Southern Pines all the way down to where it meets the Little PD River in Nichols, South Carolina, or near Nichols, South Carolina. It flows, it's sort of a central theme of the area that it goes through: Scotland County, Robeson, Hoke, Columbus, and it just has been over the years a focal point for people to enjoy the river as a source of water, source of recreation, and I think it's sort of a uniting theme through that area and a natural protection area.
Lane, you talk to people all the time who come use it. Why does the river mean so much to people?
Well, I believe it's, just for the historical aspect of it. A lot of people that I come in contact with, they tell me a lot of stories about how they grew up on the river, how their mother and father grew up on the river, and so on and so on. And I even got some history. My parents actually has news articles where my great-grandfather worked for Butter's Lumber Company, running a steam engine when they used to float logs down the river. So, and like I said, it's just to survive. People were hunting, fishing, you know, transportation to get from one area from the river down to the next. I believe it's, you know, it's touched people's lives in all different aspects, from living to recreational to historical meanings also.
So what do your students tell you, Joseph, who grew up around here, about their experience with the river?
Well, obviously, the river is sort of the lifeblood of these communities, and everyone's got a story about swimming or fishing or having picnics out along the river, and you know, it's very much been woven into the fabric of their lives, and so many major events seem to be around or in or somehow associated with the river.
Some of our viewers will not have been on the river or not have been on the river recently. Talk about some of the distinguishing features. What is it that you'll see and feel once you're on the river?
Well, at Lumber River State Park, with the Lumber River being designated as natural and wild scenic river, you get on the river, it's like it was hundreds of years ago, still in its natural setting. You know, a lot of different recreational opportunities, with paddling being the most popular recreational opportunity. You know, people can catch all kinds of variety of fish, from bass to catfish to sunfish, a lot of different fish varieties that's out there. Also, if you want to see other kind of critters that's out there, from your different birds, reptiles, amphibians. Lumber River's got a lot of it. So, and also at the park itself, you know, we're here in the recreational business. People paddling, also picnicking, hiking. You know, got a lot of different things that they can see there here at Lumber River State Park.
And being a Blackwater river, the water's beautiful. The water's cleaner than you might think than it appears. Actually very clean, thus the natural and scenic river designation that the Lumber River received in 1998. And there are a lot of twists and turns in the rivers and in the river, and just like Lane said, it's about the same as it's been for many years, and can be a challenging canoe trip.
So what are some of the wildlife that specifically that you would see up and down the river? What are some of the interesting ecological or habitat features that you would see?
Well, as Elaine mentioned, there's lots of different types of fish in the river and targets for fishermen, but there's also there are ducks. There are lots of different wood ducks is a native species, and then we have migrating other ducks like mallards and black ducks and that sort of thing. White-tailed deer, wild turkey, and then there are a lot of other birds that are very interesting to see on the river that are non-game birds, like pileated woodpeckers, owls, hawks, and then there's a warbler called the prothanotary warbler. That's a fairly unusual bird to see, which is you can see on the river occasionally.
Yeah, so the list goes on and on, right? Black bears, and talking about fish in the water, you have a lot of smaller fish that are really important for the ecosystem, for the food webs, energy transfer up to those systems, like chubs and darters, and you've got the red cockaded woodpecker in addition to things like the pileated woodpecker, and then when you start talking about plants, you've got things, obviously, at least near the headwaters, you have longleaf pine and the wiregrass ecosystems that are really important within the basin. As you go further down, you start to get into things like sweet gum and bald cypress that are really important. And it houses a number of species of concern, we'd call them, endangered or threatened either at the state or federal level. One of the ones that we're really happy to be helping conserve and protect is the woody goldenrod, which is really only found in a couple places, including on several of the properties that we protect.
So Lane, tell us a little bit about the park itself. Where is it? How do people get to it? What are the kinds of things people do in and around the park?
All right. Well, at Lumber River State Park, it's one of our larger state parks found in the North Carolina State Park System. We got almost 14,000 acres, and it's actually stretched through 4 different counties, like you mentioned before, Columbus, Robson, Scotland, and Hope County. And we kind of describe a lot of the other parks are just a large mass of land that's right there. We consider Lumber River State Park a linear park. So it's stretched up and down the 115 miles of river. And like I said, we're open every day except Christmas Day. People can come out, picnic, hike, view wildlife. Also, we got 24 different access areas or put-in spots up and down the river to where people can actually paddle down the river or put in john boats at some of them. Got canoeing campsites if you want to several day excursions to where you can actually camp on the river itself. We have some walk-to sites at our different access areas at Chalk Banks, which is located in Scotland County, and also Princess Anne, which is located down at the Robson-Columbus County line. And also have some drive-to sites that's there also.
Do you find people who canoe both up the river and down the river?
Do find that. Got a lot of folks that, that will, some of our beginner folks that might put in there at Princess Anne, that might be a little scared of paddling on the river. That section of the river down on the southern end is a lot wider than what it is up in Scotland County. And we encourage a lot of folks to put in, if you're just getting used to it, paddle upstream and you float back down to the boat ramp. But then there's also folks that will put in and travel downstream and actually have people that will shuttle them to these different locations that kind of have done it more than one time.
So talk to us a little bit about what's different from the Lumber River State Park versus some other ones where you've worked at, and what do park staff do?
Well, with park staff, we're kind of a jack of all trades but master of none. One thing that's drawn me to the state park system is just the variety of stuff that we get to do. Every day is kind of different. We do a little bit of everything, like I said, from I'm certified law enforcement, so we do have some law enforcement encounters that we have to come to when we're protecting the park. We're also trained wildland firefighters. We use one of our resource management goals or tools that we use is actually fire, where we actually bring prescribed fire back into the ecosystem because we found out that it has been taken out of the ecosystem throughout the years. We're also trained medical responders, so we'd have to respond to injured hikers, injured paddlers, different things like that. But one of our main things here at the park was actually educate the public about what's at the park, what's natural about the park, what can you do, recreational activities. We'll give guided canoe trips, give nature hikes to different groups that request them. So yeah, that's a little bit about what we do here at the park and how it's different than the parks that I worked at in the past. Like I said, it's considered a linear park. So we do a lot of traveling from one site to the other. But like I said, just the different communities and municipalities that this river has touched and how it brings folks to those communities, and just hearing about the history along the river is pretty neat. Whereas at some of the other parks, it's kind of a secluded area, might not be around any municipalities or different things like that, but coming through Fair Bluff, Lumberton, Pembroke, Wagram, just, speaking with a lot of those folks, get to learn a lot about the history of the park. So.
Speaking of history, Dickson, you've got an interesting family history of getting connected to the river itself and in serving as a watchdog and a protector of it. Talk about your dad and how you got involved as well.
Okay, well, as I mentioned, I grew up in Lumberton, and my brother and father and I would canoe and fish and hunt on the Lumber River and swim in the summertime. And my father was also from Lumberton. He was a lawyer in Lumberton for all his life and lived in Lumberton all his life. And in 1989, the North Carolina legislature passed a law to create the Lumber River State Park. However, the state park could not take title to any real property until there was a master plan approved for the state park. So my father and I incorporated the Lumber River Conservancy in 1991, and it was organized as a 501c3 organization to receive charitable contributions. And we actually received a donation from Carolina Power and Light at that time, predecessor to Duke Power now, for $25,000 to pay for the master plan for the North Carolina State Park. And once that was completed, the state park could take title to land. In the meantime, while that was happening, the Lumber River Conservancy, being a 501c3 organization, received donations of land that were destined for the park. And we were able to turn that land over to the state park once the master plan was approved. And since then, we have also received other donations of land and conservation easements. And I think to date, we've turned over over 1,000 acres of land to the state park.
So the Conservancy exists to make sure that the park is well fed with pieces of property that people can use for access and that can help protect some of that wildlife and some of those other endangered species.
Exactly, and not only that, but our mission is also to protect the entire riparian corridor of the river and its tributaries. And so land that we don't turn over to the state park, we protect in perpetuity. We also have currently about 2,400 acres of land that we own, and we have conservation easements over about 650 acres in addition to the land that was turned over to the state park. So we really work in tandem with the state park, and whatever meets their needs that they determined to be in their mission, if we can obtain it, we'll turn it over to them. Otherwise, we protect it ourselves.
So for 30 years or so, the Conservancy has existed and has been an absolutely critical organization to protect and preserve the river long term.
Absolutely, and that's it's continued for that period of time. We hope it'll continue for at least another 30 years.
So talk a little bit about the process of how the Conservancy adds some of this land under its protection or works with the state park. If someone had a tract somewhere along the river and they were hoping to keep it protected, how does that whole process work?
Well, if someone has some land that they're interested in donating to the Lumber River Conservancy, either outright or in the form of a conservation easement, which is a protective easement on someone's property, they still own it and have the right to use it, but there are certain uses that are restricted and prohibited in the future, like subdivision and that sort of thing. In either case, they can contact the Lumber River Conservancy through our webpage, and we can discuss a possible donation by them of their property outright or as a conservation easement. And there are income tax deductions that are available for people who make contributions to our organization, which, as I said, is a 501c3 organization.
Joseph, talk a little bit about your role, because you have a teaching and research role with the university, and you're also heavily involved with the Conservancy, kind of a long tradition that dates back to Dr. Ash and Dr. Sellers and others.
Right, so Dr. Andy Ash, who recently retired, worked with the small group at the very beginning in the early 90s to start writing grants and identify land that was valuable and needed to be protected. He was able to talk the administration, I think, into this agreement where an employee of the university would also split their time and serve as executive director. And the first person who took that role was Dr. Trish Sellers, and she, from all accounts, I was never privileged enough to meet her, but was the motor running and driving the Conservancy for a decade, basically. And she had to step away due to health reasons, and so I was hired in this position that really splits my time, as you mentioned. So about 75% of my duties are teaching, mentoring students, serving on committees, overseeing student organizations. And then about 25% of my time is spent as the executive director, where I'm really basically the primary point person. So I run the website and try to do some of the social media, field incoming calls and direct them to whoever they need to be put in contact with, probably more than he likes. That's often Dickson. And so just trying to keep the ball rolling and build a little bit on the foundation that I walked into.
With your biologist hat on, what are some of the interesting research opportunities or even classroom opportunities seeing the river as a lab that would set up for ongoing study?
Right, so the river is an excellent, essentially outdoor field station, if you want to think of it that way. That provides lots of opportunities both to the faculty but also to students. The fact that it is a mile down the road from the university makes it really logistically easy for them to get out there and do things. And they are taking advantage of that opportunity. Part of the agreement between UNCP and the Conservancy not only is sort of the creation of my split position here, but it also guarantees faculty here the access to tracks that we own along the river. And so we have faculty and students who are out nearly every day during the academic year at least, out sampling plants and water and taking soil samples. So they're really taking advantage of that, both from the classroom sort of field trip opportunities to outdoor labs to student independent research, all the way up through advanced research that the faculty are doing, sort of their professional research.
So I want to talk to you about a particular thing that the university and the Conservancy partnered on for some research, but before I do that, from a biologist perspective, how different is this river from some of the rivers where you've studied in the western part of the state?
So it's very different. So while this river, from my understanding, has more of an elevational gradient from its headwaters to the mouth than a lot of the coastal plain rivers do, it's still nothing compared to what we see in the foothills where I grew up. So a lot of the rivers in that area are coming out of the mountains, so they are seeing significant drops, which means they are moving faster. They are typically wider because that increased velocity helps them carve out a wider channel bank. They are typically more sedimented, so they are cloudier and kind of muddy looking, which for those of us who grew up in that area, we love that as much as the people here love that sort of black water. But so this river is very different in a lot of ways. The higher water quality, obviously it being a black water river, the slow meandering nature, all of the swamps and wetlands and the Carolina bays that are associated with it. Hydrologically, it's a very different sort of system.
And what about this research project that the university and some of its professors and students have partnered with the Conservancy to gather some funds from Duke to do some studies? And where's that at right now?
So the project you're talking about is one that was really, it's a collaborative research project between several of our faculty in the department, including a freshwater biologist, a plant ecologist, and a geneticist who are really interested in the microbial diversity of the soils and water of the river. And ideally in their project, they're establishing some kind of baseline so that we know how any changes in hydrology or events like storms, hurricanes, sort of push us off that baseline and if the river is able to recover. So that was funded with a significant grant from the Duke Energy Foundation, which essentially the Conservancy co-sponsored. We got that grant and that allowed those researchers to buy some very sort of top of the line advanced equipment. So students here are getting a very advanced research experience akin to what they would get at any other major institution in the Southeast. And really that's in the preliminary stages. It took a little while to get that equipment here and to get it set up. So really it started in earnest sort of over the summer. But the preliminary sort of data they're getting suggests that the river is very healthy, that contrary to some of the community perspectives or thoughts, it still has extremely high water quality, even along some of the more urban areas like Lumberton that it runs through. And so we're just in the stages sort of, building our understanding of that portion. We know a decent amount about the fish and the amphibians and the mammals, but not a lot about the microbes, which biologists are learning are more and more important, both sort of in the human body, but also in the ecosystem outdoors. So.
And Lane, from your perspective, what has the storms like Matthew and Florence, which were particularly felt in this part of the state in both 2016 and 2018, what has that done to what you've seen firsthand on the river?
Well, when I first came to the park, that was in March of 2018. We were still in the process of removing fallen trees that was in the Lumber River. This affects a lot of recreational opportunities that people want to do on the river. Also, I know some of our infrastructure, some of our roads and stuff that's in our acreage of land got washed out. We're still in the process of trying to repair those roads. Right now, we're just finishing up a project at Big Sandy Ridge. Large area of road got washed out, and we're in the process working with different agencies of actually removing some of these trees that's in the river to allow the water to flow more easily, and also to allow recreational opportunities where folks can actually paddle from one end of the river down to the other.
Are there restrictions because of the designation that the river has that dates back to the Conservancy's involvement with it? Are there restrictions to what can and can't be done in the river?
There are restrictions that's on it. You know, as far as nobody is allowed to actually go and cut trees from off the river. There has to be, there's a process that it has to go through. We go through the Corps of Engineers, gets through the process, and there's different requirements on, you know, when a tree is cut, it has to be tied off or wedged in between some other trees to where it won't flow down the river or float down the river anymore. Also, trees that's been in the river for a long time, those cannot be disturbed because it is got some kind of habitat that's already set up for different aquatic organisms, plants, animals, and different things like that. So, yeah, quite a lot of requirements that's required.
As our program comes to an end for today, let me just throw out a quick lightning round question. Give me a couple of primary reasons why somebody should go see the river.
Oh, the Lumber River is a beautiful river. It's a winding, meandering, quiet place that someone can go not far from an urban area in this region, which can get you away from some of the noise and rush and hush of the day.
Yeah, I will second pretty much everything Dickson just said there. It's a great place to get away, very isolated in many areas, so you kind of feel like you've found this little slice of paradise. But river corridors are also biological hotspots, so there's lots of diversity. You can get out and see all kinds of critters that you are not going to have a chance to see in your yard or on campus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, come to the park, good place to recreate, you know, burn some calories, especially after the holidays.
We all need that.
Yeah, and also, like I said, a quiet place to go, you know. A lot of people's got a lot of things going on in their lives. It's a good way to just to get rid of the technology, hustle and bustle, and kind of take it easy and enjoy nature.
Well, thank you one and all for a great program to talk about the river and the Conservancy and its historic role. Join us again next time when we tackle another interesting subject right here on Impact.